Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. A judge is ordering an unnamed DOGE employee to answer questions under oath. And a separate judge in California rules the mass firing of probationary workers is likely illegal. We have the latest developments.
As Trump gets ready to sign a minerals deal with Ukraine, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle weigh in on the agreement.
The first phase of the Epstein files are released, but Attorney General Pam Bondi orders an investigation, saying an FBI field office violated her request to hand over all the documents.
Authorities say Gene Hackman's death is suspicious enough to warrant an investigation. The veteran actor was found dead along with his wife and their dog at their home on Wednesday.
Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard objects to a reported demand in the UK for a backdoor to Apple's encrypted cloud data.
Finding and keeping love. A mythologist offers a new perspective on living life informed by archetypes.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Happy Friday, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to NTD.
Happy Friday. It is the 28th of February, and today's top news: an unnamed DOGE employee and their 3 other federal employees are on the hook to answer Attorney General's questions under oath. A district judge is granting the request from a Washington-based labor union and other groups.
Meanwhile, a different judge in California ruled that mass firings of probationary workers is likely illegal. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
District Judge John Bates is requiring Trump administration officials to clarify under oath the inner workings of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency. Officials from the Department of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau are asked to clarify which DOGE employees have access to their systems. While the DOGE employee to testify is unnamed, they'll be asked to clarify who's leading the department and making decisions, and what exactly employees are tasked with doing. Though Trump said Elon Musk is in charge of DOGE, the White House says Elon Musk is not a DOGE employee and doesn't have the authority to make decisions. Instead, DOGE's acting administrator is Amy Gleason, a former healthcare executive. In a separate case, a California judge ruled that mass firings of probationary federal workers is likely illegal.
It said that I was being let go because I had poor performance. But I've worked for the government for almost 10 years. I've never had a negative appraisal.
Plaintiffs argue the termination reasons are false and that the Office of Personnel Management doesn't have the authority to fire workers for other agencies. However, the attorney representing OPM argues the firings weren't direct orders. Instead, agencies were directed to review its probationary workers and only allow the highest performing and mission critical to stay. The judge has ordered OPM's request to be rescinded to prevent more firings, and some employees will be reinstated. Democrats say the cuts are unwarranted and will be used to pay for Republicans' tax breaks. However, Republicans say a less bloated government is what Americans voted for.
That wants to essentially cut taxes by $4.5 trillion for their wealthiest supporters and large corporations. And to do that, they need to cut as much as they can cut. And they hope these emails so demoralize people working for the government that they'll just outright quit.
The American people are behind what's happening. The DOGE efforts is polling over 80% right now. They want us to find efficiencies in the federal government. They want the government to be smaller and leaner and more accountable to the taxpayers. And that's what these efforts are all about.
Several lawsuits are underway challenging DOGE and government agencies working with it. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
President Trump is set to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy today to close a minerals deal.
U.S. lawmakers have different takes on the agreement. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the Ukraine update.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Ireland on Thursday, making a quick stop before continuing to the U.S. Zelenskyy is expected to close a minerals deal with President Trump in D.C. on Friday. The exact details of the deal are not clear yet, but Zelenskyy says they'll be discussed during the talks on Friday. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal says the deal seems extortionist because it might not include security guarantees for Ukraine. Blumenthal adds he also wants to meet with Zelenskyy for bipartisan talks alongside GOP lawmakers.
So that my Republican colleagues can hear from him about how Ukraine's security involves ours and how extortionate tactics from this administration are endangering our security.
Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he thinks the deal will change Washington's narrative on Ukraine. That's because the U.S. will finally have a major investment in Ukraine.
I think it's the most important thing we could do. I've been working on this for 2 years, trying to get President Biden to do it, but I think with President Trump doing it, it will change their narrative.
This comes as a U.S. delegation is meeting Russian counterparts in Turkey on Thursday. Russian President Vladimir Putin praised the strengthening of ties.
First contacts with the new U.S. administration give certain hopes. There is mutual determination to work restoration of relations between two countries.
The main goal of Thursday's talks is to restore functionality of the embassies in Washington and Moscow. That's to lay the foundation for peace talks to end the fighting in Ukraine. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
And that rare earths minerals deal with Ukraine is moving forward. That's according to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
Yes, Bessent told Fox News yesterday that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy will sign the deal during his visit to Washington today.
So the deal is done. President Zelenskyy is coming here to sign the deal tomorrow. So there is no more negotiation, and it is a deal on strategic minerals, oil and gas, and infrastructure assets. And it's really a win-win because it brings the Ukrainian people and the American business community closer together.
Bessent said the Ukrainian Governing Council approved the deal Wednesday night. He said the agreement will show the American people that their money is not being, as he put it, squandered.
Trade and the war in Ukraine took center stage as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer met with President Trump at the White House yesterday. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the latest.
This is a wonderful country that I know very well.
And President Trump and UK Prime Minister Starmer highlighted close U.S.-UK ties on Thursday. But Starmer's visit also comes at a time when President Trump is vowing reciprocal tariffs on both adversaries and allies alike. President Trump did say, though, that Starmer tried really hard persuading him not to put tariffs on UK goods, adding that they might have a trade deal coming out soon. Watch.
He tried. He was working hard, I'll tell you that. He earned whatever the hell they pay him over there. But he tried. We could very well end up with a real trade deal where the tariffs wouldn't be necessary.
Trump on Wednesday just threatened 25% tariffs on EU goods. And on Thursday morning, Trump said his 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada will take place on March 4th, adding that he's also imposing another 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. The reason, Trump says, is that these countries are not doing enough to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.
A lot of them come from China. We're not going to allow it to happen. So that goes on the 4th of March.
And Trump and Starmer also talked about the next steps to what Trump calls a very achievable ceasefire in Ukraine. Trump says he thinks it's going to happen hopefully quickly, though it still needs to be finalized.
I want to see soldiers stop getting shot, and I don't want to pay billions and billions and billions of dollars, nor does the Prime Minister or anybody else, on a senseless war that should have never happened.
Starmer, meanwhile, emphasized that any potential deal cannot reward the aggressor.
Because it can't be peace that rewards the aggressor or that gives encouragement to regimes like Iran.
Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
President Trump has accepted an invitation from King Charles to visit Great Britain.
This would mark the first time in modern history that a British monarch has hosted an elected leader for two state visits.
Now, the late Queen Elizabeth previously invited Trump for a 3-day state visit in June 2019 during his first term.
Trump said he looks forward to being there and honoring the king and the country. No date for the visit has been announced so far.
Next, Egypt says Israel and Hamas have begun negotiating the next phase of the ceasefire.
Egypt's State Information Service says officials from Israel, Qatar, and the United States have started intensive discussions in Cairo.
Phase 1 of the truce between Israel and Hamas is set to expire tomorrow.
Phase 2 talks are meant to negotiate an end to the war, including the return of all remaining living hostages and the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza.
Of the 59 remaining hostages in Gaza, Israel believes only 24 are still alive.
Hours before talks began, an Israeli official said the country would not withdraw from a strategic corridor in the Gaza Strip as called for under the ceasefire. This is likely to further complicate the negotiations.
The first phase of the long-awaited Epstein files has been released.
The documents stem from the investigation and conviction of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on what was in the files and reactions to their release.
Attorney General Pam Bondi released the first batch of files on Thursday in conjunction with the FBI. Bondi says the Department of Justice is following through on President Trump's commitment to transparency. She added that they are lifting the veil on the, quote, disgusting actions of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators. The Justice Department says the initial batch of files contains documents that were previously leaked but never formally released by the government. The files include copies of flight logs from Epstein's private plane, long accessible in various court cases, as well as a photocopy of an address book reportedly compiled by Epstein and his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. Many sections of the book are blacked out. Also included is a list of masseuses in states such as Florida, New Mexico, and California with significant redactions, along with an evidence list containing more than 150 items, including nude images, massage tables, and other items.
Epstein was convicted of sexually abusing and exploiting more than 250 underage girls in his homes in New York, Florida, and other locations.
Some criticized the lack of new information. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna called the release a complete disappointment. Luna wrote on X, "Get us the information we asked for." Bondi said Thursday the FBI was caught withholding files related to Epstein. The Attorney General says a source informed her that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation. Bondi says the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files, despite her repeated requests. She ordered the agency to deliver all files related to Epstein to her office by 8 a.m. on Friday. Bondi also directed FBI Director Kash Patel to immediately launch an investigation into why her initial order to the FBI was not followed. During his confirmation hearing, Patel responded to a question from Senator Marsha Blackburn on whether he would direct investigators to further probe the Epstein case.
Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
Patel wrote on X Thursday that the FBI is entering a new era, one that will be defined by integrity, accountability, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Patel promised there would be no cover-ups, no missing documents, and no stone left unturned.
No official date has been shared for the next release of Epstein files. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Still to come, authorities say Gene Hackman's death is suspicious enough to warrant an investigation. The veteran actor was found dead along with his wife and their dog at their home on Wednesday.
And Mexico has given the U.S. custody of 29 defendants charged with drug-related crimes. One of them is linked to the 1985 torture and murder of a DEA agent. We'll have that story after the break.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore. ShenyunCreations.com.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one, get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one, get one free offer goes away.
Welcome back. Police say Gene Hackman's death is suspicious enough for an investigation. The veteran actor was found dead along with his wife and their dog in their home on Wednesday.
Authorities say they had been deceased for quite a while. Initial findings show there was no external trauma to either individual. While authorities say there are no immediate signs of foul play, they also say they aren't ruling it out. Here are those details.
Oscar winner Gene Hackman dead at 95. The actor, his wife, Betsy Arakawa, and their dog all found dead in their New Mexico home. 911 audio reveals when a caretaker for the property asked police to conduct a welfare check.
Santa Fe 911, what is the emergency?
Hello, my name is I'm the caretaker for Santa Fe Summit up here about past 10,000 ways. I think we just found one deceased person inside a house. What's the address here? There's no address. I'm going to wait for you at the gate.
According to an affidavit from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, Hackman's body was found in the home's mudroom, and his wife was located in a bathroom. An open prescription bottle and scattered pills found near her body. The family pet was also recovered.
It's not normal to find 2 people deceased in the residence. That's concerning. And then there was also a dog that was in a kennel that was also found deceased.
Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
Okay, my units are on their way, okay?
According to the search warrant, no immediate signs of carbon monoxide poisoning or gas leak were found. Authorities say no signs of foul play have been found, but they say circumstances surrounding the deaths are suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough investigation.
A drug lord linked to the murder of a DEA agent back in 1985 is now in U.S. custody.
Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced the arrest of 29 defendants from Mexico facing drug trafficking and murder charges. Here are those details.
A Department of Justice press release Thursday said 29 wanted men from Mexico were taken into custody. They are facing charges around the country for crimes including drug trafficking and murder. The DOJ says the defendants include leaders of drug cartels the U.S. has designated as terrorist organizations. Among them, known drug lord Rafael Caro Quintero, who Mexico considers the founder of the notorious Guadalajara cartel. Quintero is alleged to have been involved in the 1985 kidnapping, torture, and murder of DEA Special Agent Enrique Caminera Salazar. The DEA's acting administrator Derek Malt reacted to the announcement, saying the moment is extremely personal for the men and women of the DEA. The press release alleges the 29 defendants are responsible for importing massive quantities of fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin. Former DEA Chief of International Operations Mike Vigil described Mexico's cooperation with U.S. authorities to extradite these men as historical. It comes as President Trump threatens to impose 25% tariffs on Mexican imports. In a Wednesday post on X, AG Pam Bondi wrote more than 63,000 Americans died from drug overdoses in 2024. She also referred to the Halt Fentanyl Act, which the Senate Judiciary Committee advanced in a bipartisan vote on Thursday. Under the act, possession of 100 grams or more of fentanyl would automatically trigger a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence.
Social media influencers Andrew and Tristan Tate are back in the U.S. after their travel ban was lifted.
The controversial Tate brothers are under investigation in Romania for human trafficking in the country. They arrived in Florida yesterday.
In December, a court ruled their case could not proceed to trial because of legal and procedural irregularities, though the case is still open. The brothers hold dual British and American citizenship.
Andrew Tate is a self-described misogynist and has garnered millions of young fans online by promoting an ultra-masculine lifestyle.
He and his brother face accusations in Romania of trafficking minors, sex with a minor, and money laundering. They deny any wrongdoing.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said yesterday Andrew Tate is not welcome in Florida.
And a detention facility for illegal immigrants is set to reopen in New Jersey this spring. Immigration and Customs Enforcement said yesterday it would once again open the privately owned Delaney Hall. Delaney Hall in Newark was used to detain illegal immigrants between 2011 and 2017. It will start operations again, becoming the first detention facility to reopen under President Trump's administration. The facility is owned by GEO Group, a private prison company. It's the largest detention center of its kind in the region, with over 1,000 beds. GEO Group says ICE will pay $60 million a year to use Delaney Hall for the next 15 years. ICE says the size of the center and its proximity to Newark Airport will make it ideal to help deport illegal immigrants. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin has issued an executive order on immigration. He wants state police and corrections officers to assist federal immigration enforcement.
The order deputizes state law enforcement to support President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration.
A state police task force of federally deputized troopers will also be created to help identify and capture criminal illegal immigrants. The governor also directed local and regional jails to cooperate with the task force. Youngkin's move follows similar actions taken by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
In just 1 month, ICE arrested more than 20,000 illegal immigrants. That is compared to 33,000 in the entire year of 2023 under former President Joe Biden. This marks a more than 620% increase in monthly arrests compared to this previous period last year. Arkansas taking aim at the Chinese Communist Party. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders announced a set of bills yesterday to counter CCP influence in the state. The bills would prohibit state universities as well as retirement and pension funds from investing in Chinese funds. Government agencies would also be barred from using state funds to purchase made-in-China promotional products. Additionally, Arkansas cities would be banned from forming sister city agreements with Chinese cities, and companies linked to the CCP would be prohibited from leasing or owning property near the state's critical infrastructure. State universities would also lose funding if they host Confucius Institutes or similar China-run programs.
Does the Chinese regime have your data? Republican and Democrat senators introduced a bill that would ban Chinese AI app DeepSeek on government devices. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
A bipartisan group of senators are introducing a bill to ban Chinese AI platform DeepSeek on government devices over data privacy concerns. Now, the bill is introduced by Republican Senators John Husted and Pete Ricketts and Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen. A similar bill was introduced in the House earlier this month, also bipartisan. DeepSeek is similar to ChatGPT, but now even more popular with more downloads. But there's the concern that since DeepSeek is a Chinese company, user data would end up into the hands of the CCP. That's as China's national intelligence law requires all of its citizens and businesses to provide literally all data to authorities upon request. Now, it's the same reason TikTok received overwhelming bipartisan support to ban the app. And the CEO of Faroot Security said that DeepSeek is designed to send data to China Mobile, which is a company banned in the U.S. He also said that it creates a digital footprint on each user to track its users on other websites.
It gives the ability to potentially survey Americans on any other websites once they have visited a DeepSeek and start navigating to any other pages, such as maybe booking even a doctor's appointment, which is a very, very alarming development.
Senator Tom Cotton wants to take the ban a step further, calling for a government device ban on all AI tools owned by Chinese companies.
That data is forever, and it can be sensitive, and it can be used to blackmail or get leverage over a person.
Senator Cotton also elaborated about the censorship on Chinese apps like DeepSeek, that certain topics the Chinese Communist Party deems controversial are banned from the apps, even in the U.S.
Go on X, go on Facebook, go on Snapchat. Compare what you can learn there about, say, Tiananmen Square or Taiwan or the Uyghurs or Tibet to what you can learn on TikTok, which is nothing. There are stories about this in the news recently because of the new DeepSeek AI search engine, about how to type in Tiananmen Square and it'll tell you that it can't say anything about that.
South Korea put a nationwide ban on DeepSeek earlier this month over data privacy concerns. We have Taiwan, Italy, and Australia banning the app from government devices, and several states in the U.S., including Texas, New York, Florida, and Virginia, have done the same. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has condemned Thailand's return of at least 40 Uyghurs to China.
They were part of a group of 300 who fled China and were arrested in 2014. Some were sent back to China and others to Turkey, with the rest kept in Thai custody.
Rubio was a staunch advocate for Uyghurs when he served as a U.S. Senator. He reiterated that Beijing's treatment of the group amounts to genocide and crimes against humanity.
The designation of genocide was made at the end period of President Trump's first term.
And turning to National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, saying she has serious concerns with the British government's reported demand for Apple to provide backdoor access to user data.
In a letter to Congress this week, Gabbard said this would violate the rights of Americans using Apple's cloud storage.
She also objected to the idea of a foreign government putting pressure on the American company.
Apple said last week it would no longer offer advanced data security for British users.
The Washington Post, citing anonymous sources, reported that British security officials signed an order demanding Apple allow backdoor access to view fully encrypted material.
British authorities have declined to comment on the alleged order. And coming up, Senate Republicans want to make President Trump's tax cuts permanent as they work to pass a budget bill through reconciliation.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges. Oh my goodness.
So Ariel, we made this yearbook for you. It has notes from all the people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly,
your daughter?
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents. Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day. Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School. College first-round draft pick, on and off the field. We were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating. But I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
Welcome back.
If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines.
A district judge is ordering Trump administration officials to clarify under oath the inner workings of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency. A DOGE employee will be asked to clarify who's leading the department and making decisions and what employees are tasked with doing. In a separate case, a California judge ruled that mass firings of probationary federal workers is likely illegal. Some workers will be reinstated, and the firings are on pause.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected to close a minerals deal with President Trump today in Washington. The exact details of the deal are not clear yet, but Zelenskyy says they'll be discussed during the talks today. This is while a U.S. delegation met with Russian counterparts in Turkey yesterday to restore operation of the embassies in Washington and Moscow.
29 defendants charged with drug-related crimes in Mexico are now in U.S. custody. They include a notorious drug lord believed to have been involved in the 1985 kidnapping and murder of a DEA agent. The transfer comes as President Trump threatens a 25% tariff on Mexican goods.
The first phase of the Epstein files has been released, revealing previously leaked but never formally shared documents. The files include flight logs, an address book, and an evidence list with over 150 items. Critics, including Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna, calls the release disappointing due to missing details. Attorney General Pam Bondi says the FBI withheld thousands of pages of Epstein-related documents and has ordered their release. And joining us now to discuss the first phase of the Epstein files is Carol Lieberman, a board-certified psychiatrist practicing in Beverly Hills. Good morning, Carol. I'd like to start with the victims. Attorney General Pam Bondi's release says that there are 250 at the time underage victims. While their names have been withheld for their privacy, can you please comment on what their trauma is like in light of this story now being back in the news, in everywhere you look, basically?
Yes, well, most likely they have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from the sexual abuse that they received from Epstein and his friends. And so when this is in the news now, it triggers their memories of all of their abuse. and it can be very upsetting. But of course, that, although that's unfortunate, and I certainly suggest that they get therapy if they feel these memories coming back, and they can be overwhelming. But it really is important for all of these names to be released. Now, one caution: just because somebody's name is in his telephone book, for example, his little black book, or some other lists, doesn't mean that that person did something specifically wrong. Did some sexual crimes. They could well just be his friends. But we need to look into this. There are people certainly on that list who did commit sexual crimes, and it is important that we really look into that and punish them, for whatever the crime deserves.
Yes, and I do want to talk more about the implications of this release, but one more question on the victim's state of mind. Obviously, each person deals with trauma and PTSD differently. Is there any sense potentially in gratification that after all of their suffering and grief, that the scandal is getting to see the light of day?
Yes, that is definitely a part of it as well. I mean, they have been waiting for this for a very long time. If Epstein hadn't died, they would have gotten the criminals would have gotten their comeuppance, and the victims would have gotten satisfaction from knowing that they were punished.
Yes, his death certainly doesn't allow them to have their full day in court. Can you comment on the decision to not release the files in the first place?
Well, I mean, I know that there were a lot of different factors at work. Unfortunately, because they haven't been released, even some, as we speak, still some haven't been released. But so that really caused, a big buildup. And so yesterday was rather anticlimactic when, in fact, there really wasn't much that we didn't know that was released.
In terms of releasing them now, this is quite a significant amount of time has passed. Does it change anything?
For the victims?
Just generally, yeah. Does releasing them now have any, does it impact anything legally that should take place as a result of, putting this out there now?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that there is going to be a more in-depth investigation of the people on the list. And, presumably there will be charges brought against some of them. And yes, even though it's just, well, there's a saying, justice delayed is justice not served. But really, I think from the point of view of the victims, they will be happy if there's justice served at any time.
Due to the number of high-profile people that were on the plane, it feels like maybe this was not released sooner. And so I'm wondering, is Bondi and Kash Patel's interest in releasing this now to somewhat restore the public's faith in the legal system?
Well, and certainly to restore or to cause the public to have faith in this administration. I mean, President Trump, in his campaigning, promised the American people that he was going to release a lot of things that really have been hidden, such as the JFK files and these files as well. So he's trying to fulfill his promise. And I think the idea of having more transparency in general is so important. And that's what this government is trying to do.
And as we finish up, I think there's a lot of intrigue around this case, and it's easy to be misdirected toward some of the high-profile names, where really the issue is the victims and their abuse. We had someone on yesterday who was speaking about child grooming. What can we do as a society to better protect this from happening?
Yes, certainly that should be one of the lessons of this. This is happening with people not connected to Epstein. This is happening every day all over America, the grooming. And hopefully another value to releasing these names is getting people more aware of grooming and how bad it is and how it's happening all around. And you really need to be on the lookout for it. I mean, people, it's happening, coaches, teachers, just everyday people, some of them, obviously not all these people, but there are some people, particularly people who have a lot of contact with children, who may well be getting their confidence, giving them gifts, making them feel that they're special, all the kinds of things that people do for grooming. And then, of course, it can often lead to sexual inappropriate behavior.
Well, it's difficult to talk about, but important to, and we appreciate you waking up early this morning to join us. Thank you, Carol Lieberman.
Thank you.
Members of the Senate DOGE caucus met with President Trump and Elon Musk at the White House yesterday. That's as some USAID workers who've been laid off or put on administrative leave started to move their belongings out of the Reagan building in Washington, D.C. NTD's Jason Blair brings us the latest on that.
The Senate DOGE caucus met with President Trump and Elon Musk at the White House talking about their goals. Now, the Senate DOGE caucus is similar to their House counterpart, working with the Department of Government Efficiency, but more from the legislative side, with the goal to, quote, root out waste, fraud, and abuse and ensure the government is working for Americans. The caucus says they are hitting the ground running. After the meeting, caucus chair Senator Joni Ernst and Senator Roger Marshall released public statements. They said that the meeting went well and they were able to hear directly from Musk what his goals are.
We heard about the work that they are doing through the agencies, the dollars that they are saving of waste for our taxpayers.
If there's one thing I would communicate to folks, it's just that the compassion that Elon has for the people that do work for the federal government, that there are lots of people that are doing a great job. Their jobs are important. We want to make sure that we save those.
Chair Ernst listed some things that the Senate DOGE caucus has been up to. One of those is an act introduced by Senator Marshall aimed at prohibiting funding going to institutions that conduct gain-of-function research, and another act by Senator Risch aimed at reducing the national debt. And in other related DOGE news, some USAID workers were seen gathering their belongings from the Reagan building here in Washington, D.C. They were given Thursday and Friday to gather their things. There were also some supporters gathered outside of the building holding signs. Some of them were applauding in support as the workers were leaving the building. And one lady was even seen trying to peel off tape that was covering up words on one of the signs out front of the building. Now, one worker who was laid off and a union representative called the situation tragic, difficult, with very little communication.
There's been no offboarding with us. It's just been very sudden, everything. One day being locked out of the building, the next being told you're on admin leave.
We've had our emails. Most people have had their email accounts shut off, so they're getting notices third party from Facebook groups and from chat groups.
On Sunday, the Trump administration announced that at least 1,600 USAID workers were laid off, with pretty much everyone else put on administrative leave, except for, quote, mission-critical staff. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
Turning now to the budget battle in Washington. The House and Senate have passed their own versions of the budget resolution.
Republican lawmakers will now have to reconcile their differences to pass President Trump's legislative agenda. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
The Republican budget will set in motion the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Children will be hurt, families will be hurt, seniors will be hurt, everyday Americans with disabilities will be hurt, hospitals will be hurt, and nursing homes will be hurt, all across America.
That was House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries accusing House Republicans of having cut Medicaid benefits in the budget resolution approved this week. House Republicans insist that the spending cuts will only target fraud, waste, and abuse within Medicaid.
Yeah, they will see no change to their benefits. In fact, by saving Medicaid, by rooting out the waste, abuse, and fraud, which you've heard, but also those who are ineligible, we will have more allocation to those who are truly in need of Medicaid. And who knows, maybe we could even increase the Medicaid fund.
It's now up to Senate Majority Leader John Thune to decide whether to pick up or not the House's version of the budget resolution. Senate Republicans have already expressed their disagreements.
Do you think that you guys should just adopt the budget resolution that the House passed?
Short answer is likely no. Long answer is hell no.
I'm not going to vote for Medicaid cut. Anything that slashes into benefits for people who are working
I'm not going to be.
When we talk about moving and cutting, we need to talk about how we do that in an orderly fashion.
Senate Republican leadership has already expressed that they will seek to make the Trump tax cuts permanent and add border defense and energy spending to a new budget resolution that will be sent to the House.
This is the first important step in opening up the reconciliation process. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but we are going to deliver the America First agenda. We're going to deliver all of it, not just parts of it.
Aside from the reconciliation process, lawmakers will have to reach an agreement to fund government through fiscal year 2025 before March 14th or face a government shutdown. Reporting for Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And coming up on a lighter note, up ahead we speak with an expert in mythology.
Our next guest has a unique take on finding and keeping lasting love. You won't want to miss that. Stay with us.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The walls surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic, so I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
Welcome back. The Department of Transportation is planning to supercharge the hiring of air traffic controllers to solve an ongoing staffing shortage.
Federal Aviation Administration is increasing starting salaries by 30% for candidates who start at its academy in Oklahoma.
The agency will also cut down its 8-step hiring process to 5 steps. The DOT expects this will speed up hiring by shaving more than 4 months off the process.
The new hiring window launched yesterday and ends March 17th. The announcement comes after a string of aviation incidents raising concerns about air traffic control.
And whether you're heading to spring break soon or in the winter of your life, Finding and keeping that perfect partnership is, for many, a lifelong adventure. Whether you're seeking a soulmate or deepening an existing bond, our next guest says the journey begins with uncovering your true archetype. Mythologist and author Alison Steger offers a unique perspective on love and relationships. Welcome, Alison. Good to have you with us this morning. What's your advice for someone out there who's looking to find their flame?
Well, I do think that understanding your archetypes can be an incredibly important key to finding and developing intimacy with a partner, whether it's someone new or someone that you've been in a relationship with for a long time. If you know what archetypal energy you're holding in that relationship, you are going to be able to deepen your relationship with each other. You're going to be able to find a greater sense of intimacy with each other, and everything about your relationship is going to be a lot better communicated.
And how about what archetypes can teach us about making love last? You mentioned for people who are already in relationships, this can apply as well.
Well, if we understand what archetypes are, they are kind of ways that we see each other as a role almost, or as like a prototypical type of being human. So if you think about like the mother archetype or the child archetype, you're seeing a role rather than seeing the other person. So if you start to recognize that I am actually seeing my partner or this new person that I'm dating as a role that they're holding, then you can get beyond just what the role is. You can recognize, okay, it's time for me to actually be in that role for them, or it's time for me to be seen outside of that role and to be seen as the changeable person that I am on the inside of the role. So archetypes are ways that we kind of have a shortcut to slotting people into different spaces in our lives. So once we recognize that we're doing that, like, you know, if you, for example, are in the role of a caregiver in your relationship, that may be one that you're willing to do, but it may not be one you want to be in all the time. And if you can start to have that conversation with your partner or with the person you're dating, then you can get a little bit deeper into recognizing who you are for each other.
So you're saying that archetypes can really change over time and in different situations. It's not just something that you hold throughout your whole lifetime. Is that right?
Well, I would say that, we all hold lots of archetypes because we hold a lot of roles in our lives, right? So sometimes you are a particular archetype and sometimes you shift away from that. I think that changes throughout the course of a life. But if you understand the concept behind that, you have an opportunity to now say, okay, I am holding that space for you right now, but now I need to stop and now you need to take over some of that, or I am this thing for you forever, or you're always going to be my queen or my king, or I'm always going to be this for you. Like I'm always the mother archetype for my children, no matter how old they are, but that role changes over time. So once we kind of have the language of understanding archetypes, it really does give us this new avenue for understanding each other.
What are the archetypes, if you could lay that out for us?
Well, archetypes really, I mean, if you can imagine just about any type of way that there is to be a human, that has an archetypal energy that goes with it. Now, some of them are big and heavy, like the mother. I think that everybody has a mother, but it doesn't really matter what kind of mother you have. You know what kind of big energy that has that goes with it, right? So if you are in a relationship with someone and you understand that, okay, I'm dating this person and I see that they have this visionary quality, well, now you know that the visionary is an archetype that is held for them. So it's not really, unfortunately, I wish it was so simple as to say, okay, you are X archetype and that's all you are forever. But human life isn't really quite that clean. We have to recognize that we change and flow over the course of our lives and in the course of our relationships. So if we can understand how that's changing over time, then that gives us another avenue toward intimacy and toward a deeper understanding of each other.
Now, your work centers on the search for authenticity through understanding mythology. Yes. Why or how do ancient myths support that search?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of archetypes in mythology, right? Myths last because they are resonant with the human psyche, right? This is why these stories have stuck around for so long. So if you think about a particular god or goddess from an ancient story, they are holding a lot of archetypal energy for themselves because that's what makes sense for the culture that they come from, and they still matter to us because when we say, okay, I feel like I'm an Athena type person, I'm a person with a lot of intellect and wisdom, that is an archetype, and that gives us an understanding of a person that resonates with that energy. So I feel that myself sometimes, like, okay, I feel like I have a little bit of that Athena energy. And when my husband sees that and understands that, that gives him a path toward understanding me in our relationship, in our marriage. So if we love myths and we read myths, they're great stories, but they also give us a lot of insights into understanding each other. And that's the power of working with them.
Looking back as a way to move forward. Thank you so much, Allison Steger, mythologist and author. Good to speak with you this morning.
Oh, thank you so much.
Going to be moving on now to a break, but my archetype says you should keep it here on NTD. We'll see you soon.
All right, see you soon.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9. The highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritang green vegetable omega-3.
My 15-year-old son, Ethan, and I had a fun and relaxing morning. We returned home, and Ethan walked to his best friend's house an hour later. I heard the ambulance scream by the street, carrying my beautiful boy. Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. He had zero chance of survival. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox.
How do you feel?
That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
David, would you give any advice?
First thing you do is not keep your ammunition with your weapons, and that your weapons need to be locked at all times.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents. Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day.
I love you.
Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. A judge is ordering an unnamed DOGE employee to answer questions under oath. And a separate judge in California rules the mass firing of probationary workers is likely illegal. We have the latest developments.
As Trump gets ready to sign a minerals deal with Ukraine, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle weigh in on the agreement.
The first phase of the Epstein files are released, but Attorney General Pam Bondi orders an investigation, saying an FBI field office violated her request to hand over all the documents.
Authorities say Gene Hackman's death is suspicious enough to warrant an investigation. The veteran actor was found dead along with his wife and their dog at their home on Wednesday.
Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard objects to a reported demand in the UK for a backdoor to Apple's encrypted cloud data.
The cherry blossom season is almost here. The National Park Service has announced some of the peak bloom dates.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Thank you for joining us and welcome to NTD.
Today's Friday, February 28th. Today's top news, an unnamed DOGE employee and 3 other federal employees are on the hook to answer the attorney's questions under oath. A district judge is granting their request from a Washington-based labor union and other groups.
Meanwhile, a different judge in California ruled that mass firings of probationary workers is likely illegal. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
District Judge John Bates is requiring Trump administration officials to clarify under oath the inner workings of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency. Officials from the Department of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau are asked to clarify which DOGE employees have access to their systems. While the DOGE employee to testify is unnamed, they'll be asked to clarify who's leading the department and making decisions, and what exactly employees are tasked with doing. Though Trump said Elon Musk is in charge of DOGE, the White House says Elon Musk is not a DOGE employee and doesn't have the authority to make decisions. Instead, DOGE's acting administrator is Amy Gleason, a former healthcare executive. In a separate case, a California judge ruled that mass firings of probationary federal workers is likely illegal.
It said that I was being let go because I had poor performance. But I've worked for the government for almost 10 years. I've never had a negative appraisal.
Plaintiffs argue the termination reasons are false and that the Office of Personnel Management doesn't have the authority to fire workers for other agencies. However, the attorney representing OPM argues the firings weren't direct orders. Instead, agencies were directed to review its probationary workers and only allowed the highest performing and mission critical to stay. The judge has ordered OPM's request to be rescinded to prevent more firings, and some employees will be reinstated. Democrats say the cuts are unwarranted and will be used to pay for Republicans' tax breaks. However, Republicans say a less bloated government is what Americans voted for.
That wants to essentially cut taxes by $4.5 trillion for their wealthiest supporters and large corporations. And to do that, they need to cut as much as they can cut. And they hope these emails so demoralize people working for the government that they'll just outright quit.
The American people are behind what's happening. The DOGE efforts is polling over 80% right now. They want us to find efficiencies in the federal government. They want the government to be smaller and leaner and more accountable to the taxpayers. And that's what these efforts are all about.
Several lawsuits are underway challenging DOGE and government agencies working with it. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
President Trump is set to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy today to close a minerals deal.
U.S. lawmakers have different takes on the agreement. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the Ukraine update.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Ireland on Thursday, making a quick stop before continuing to the U.S. Zelenskyy is expected to close a minerals deal with President Trump in D.C. on Friday. The exact details of the deal are not clear yet, but Zelenskyy says they'll be discussed during the talks on Friday. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal says the deal seems extortionist because it might not include security guarantees for Ukraine. Blumenthal adds he also wants to meet with Zelenskyy for bipartisan talks alongside GOP lawmakers.
So that my Republican colleagues can hear from him about how Ukraine's security involves ours and how extortionate tactics from this administration are endangering our security.
Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he thinks the deal will change Washington's narrative on Ukraine. That's because the U.S. will finally have a major investment in Ukraine.
I think it's the most important thing we could do. I've been working on this for 2 years, trying to get President Biden to do it, but I think with President Trump doing it, it will change their narrative.
This comes as a U.S. delegation is meeting Russian counterparts in Turkey on Thursday. Russian President Vladimir Putin praised the strengthening of ties.
First contacts with the new U.S. administration give certain hopes. There is mutual determination to work restoration of relations between two countries.
The main goal of Thursday's talks is to restore functionality of the embassies in Washington and Moscow. That's to lay the foundation for peace talks to end the fighting in Ukraine. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Yesterday, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin issued Executive Order 47, allowing state and local law enforcement officers to be deputized in support of federal immigration enforcement. He said he was taking action to remove dangerous criminal illegal immigrants. Joining us now to discuss is Andrew Arthur, fellow in law and policy with the Center for Immigration Studies, as well as a former immigration judge. Thanks for joining us this morning, Andrew. Virginia, a blue state with Governor Youngkin as a Republican governor. Did Youngkin sign this executive order to overcome sanctuary policies at the local level? And if so, will it be effective?
Yeah, Carrie, that's exactly what's going on. One of the things that we've seen in Northern Virginia, the blue part of the state, but also where a lot of the population is, has been a number of policies that have allowed dangerous criminal aliens to be released back onto the street. And, we're not talking about muggers. We're talking about rapists and other sex offenders, individuals who have committed violent crimes. By taking this step, Governor Youngkin has, in essence, allowed Virginia state troopers to act as deputy immigration agents. If they come across someone, they're not going to go looking for people, but if they come across someone in the course of their normal duties, they're going to be able to detain that individual and hold them over for ICE to take custody. In addition, in the jails in the Commonwealth, the state jails or state prisons in the Commonwealth, officers there will be able to identify and hold criminal aliens who they can then turn over to ICE. Again, they're not actually deporting anybody, they're not charging anybody, but they will be a force multiplier for ICE agents in the Old Dominion.
I want to get to the enforcement part, but you brought up something now that really made me think. Are these criminal illegal immigrants held to a different standard than U.S. citizens, or are these, violent criminals, you mentioned some are rapists, are they being released just because those jurisdictions have soft on crime laws on the books?
Yeah, they're not being given special breaks. We have seen other localities around the United States, California, and my old hometown of Baltimore, that actually do cut special breaks to people because they're aliens and they don't want them to be deported. That doesn't happen in Virginia. But, Virginia, Northern Virginia is extremely liberal, and the officials there don't want to cooperate with ICE at all, even if it means removing criminals from the streets and taking them off the streets permanently. And unfortunately, we've seen indications in Northern Virginia that people who live in immigrant communities where most of these crimes occur are now afraid to go to the police because they know that the police are simply going to allow those individuals to return to the streets rather than being removed from the United States. So this is a crucial role, a crucial step that Governor Youngkin has taken to protect the citizens of Northern Virginia from their own local governments. It's rather exceptional when you think about it, Carrie. But no, they don't get any special breaks, but they're also not removed as they should be.
When you put it this way and we talk about what it's like in the communities and on the street level, Is this a case where you now have federal agents on one team with the state law enforcement, while local and county law enforcement will be attempting to stymie the efforts to remove illegal immigrants if they're in a sanctuary area?
Yeah, no, and honestly, there's nothing novel about this because those, local governments in Northern Virginia have long been attempting to stymie immigration enforcement. It wasn't, but a couple of decades ago that there was full compliance, full assistance by local police throughout Virginia to, help ICE get dangerous people off the streets. That's what cops do. They want them out. They want them gone. But, in the last 20 years, we've seen this creeping sanctuary movement, particularly in Northern Virginia, that is reprehensible to people who live in the Tidewater and the, downstate areas of the state. But yeah, no. Now that we have the state of Virginia in compliance, it's, at least the federal government has an ally on its side in helping to protect the people of Northern Virginia. And by the way, Carrie, that's where most of the immigrants, most of the illegal immigrants in Virginia live, is in those northern counties, Arlington, Alexandria, Loudoun. So, this is a crucial step. It's ridiculous that any state would have to, attempt to supersede the decisions of local officials to keep criminals in the United States, but that's where we are in 2025.
Yes, in preparing for this discussion, I noticed that there are lists for illegal immigrants that show them which counties that they can go to. And we've seen a spectrum of responses from other state and local officials. The governor of Illinois, along with the mayor of Chicago, said that they would not cooperate with ICE. Yet Mayor Eric Adams of New York City said he would coordinate with ICE and allow them access to the city's main jail, Rikers Island. So does the law provide any consistency here, or is it just the Wild West in terms of enforcement?
Yeah, unfortunately, under our system of federalism, power, comes from the bottom up and from the top down. It goes in both directions. And with respect to Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson of Chicago, they're answerable to their constituents. But a lot of their constituents, all of Johnson's constituents, live in Chicago, a city that's quickly emptying out of all but the most, strident leftists. The federal government literally has to act, in pari parentis, as we say in the law. Somebody has to be the adult in the room. And DHS Secretary Noem, Border Czar Tom Homan, and Donald Trump are, attempting to protect the people of Chicago who keep electing officials that aren't really interested in electing them. There'll be other elections coming up. We're going to have one coming up soon. And we're going to see whether, which side of that equation people like better. Do they like immigration enforcement? Do they want the criminals off the street? Or do they want Chicago, a city that already has plenty of crime, to continue to release criminals onto the street? We'll see how that plays out. I think that in the long term, people are going to return to law and order and security. But, that's a process, and it's a political process, which in this country never moves quickly.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your insights and your experience as an immigration judge. Andrew Arthur, have a great day.
Kerry, thank you for having me.
The first phase of the long-awaited Epstein files has been released.
The documents stem from the investigation and conviction of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on what was in the files and the reactions to their release.
Attorney General Pam Bondi released the first batch of files on Thursday in conjunction with the FBI. Bondi says the Department of Justice is following through on President Trump's commitment to transparency. She added that they are lifting the veil on the, quote, disgusting actions of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators. The Justice Department says the initial batch of files contains documents that were previously leaked but never formally released by the government. The files include copies of flight logs from Epstein's private plane, long accessible in various court cases, as well as a photocopy of an address book reportedly compiled by Epstein and his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. Many sections of the book are blacked out. Also included is a list of masseuses in states such as Florida, New Mexico, and California with significant redactions, along with an evidence list containing more than 150 items, including nude images, massage tables, and other items. Epstein was convicted of sexually abusing and exploiting more than 250 underage girls in his homes in New York, Florida, and other locations. Some criticized the lack of new information. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna called the release a complete disappointment. Luna wrote on X, "Get us the information we asked for." Bondi said Thursday the FBI was caught withholding files related to Epstein. The Attorney General says a source informed her that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation. Bondi says the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files, despite her repeated requests. She ordered the agency to deliver all files related to Epstein to her office by 8 a.m. on Friday. Bondi also directed FBI Director Kash Patel to immediately launch an investigation into why her initial order to the FBI was not followed. During his confirmation hearing, Patel responded to a question from Senator Marsha Blackburn on whether he would direct investigators to further probe the Epstein case.
Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
Patel wrote on X Thursday that the FBI is entering a new era, one that will be defined by integrity, accountability, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Patel promised there would be no cover-ups, no missing documents, and no stone left unturned. No official date has been shared for the next release of Epstein files. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Authorities say Gene Hackman's death is suspicious enough to warrant an investigation. The veteran actor was found dead along with his wife and their dog at their home on Wednesday.
And Mexico has given the U.S. custody of 29 defendants charged with drug-related crimes. One linked to the 1985 torture and murder of a drug enforcement agent. We'll have that story and more after the break.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic, so I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
Talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Thanks for hearing me out, bro.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Welcome back. Police say Gene Hackman's death is suspicious enough for an investigation. The veteran actor was found dead, along with his wife and their dog, at their home on Wednesday.
Authorities say they'd been deceased for quite a while. Initial findings show there was no external trauma to either individual. While authorities say there are no immediate signs of foul play, they also say they aren't ruling it out. Here are the details.
Oscar winner Gene Hackman dead at 95. The actor, his wife Betsy Arakawa, and their dog all found dead in their New Mexico home. 911 audio reveals when a caretaker for the property asked police to conduct a welfare check.
Santa Fe 911, what is it? Emergency?
Hello, my name is I'm the caretaker for Santa Fe Summit. I'm here about past 10,000 waves. I think we just found one deceased person inside the house. What's the address here? There's no address. I'm going to wait for you at the gate.
According to an affidavit from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, Hackman's body was found in the home's mudroom, and his wife was located in a bathroom. An open prescription bottle and scattered pills found near her body. The family pet was also recovered.
It's not normal to find two people deceased in a residence. That's concerning. And then there was also a dog that was in a kennel that was also found deceased.
Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
Okay, my units are on their way, okay?
According to the search warrant, no immediate signs of carbon monoxide poisoning or gas leak were found. Authorities say no signs of foul play have been found, but they say circumstances surrounding the deaths are suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough investigation.
Arkansas is taking aim at the Chinese Communist Party. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders announced a set of bills yesterday to counter CCP influence in the state. The bills would prohibit state universities as well as retirement and pension funds from investing in Chinese funds. Government agencies would also be barred from using state funds to purchase made-in-China promotional products. Additionally, Arkansas cities would be banned from forming sister city agreements with Chinese cities. And companies linked to the CCP would be prohibited from leasing or owning property near the state's critical infrastructure. State universities would also lose funding if they host Confucius Institutes or similar China-run programs. And we're turning live now to Vice President J.D. Vance. He's at the 20th National Catholic Prayer Breakfast right now. Let's take a look at what he's saying.
I will say that even though I, in my private sector days, was a technology investor in Silicon Valley, I haven't quite figured out how to work my government computer yet. So 30 days in, I'm going to have to wing this a little bit because I thought about what I was going to say on the morning over here. And that, of course, makes all the communications staff that are sitting backstage extremely nervous because they have no idea what I'm going to say. And before I went on, I talked to Luke, who's one of my main communications guys, and I said, Luke, this is all off the record, right? No one's going to say or know what I said today. So I can just say whatever I want. And I'm sure that none of you will leak it to Axios, and none of our friends in the media back there will stream it live. So let me, just offer a few notes of appreciation. First off, to Maureen Ferguson, who has become a dear friend of mine, and I know a great leader in this community. She and her husband, Mike, have been better and kinder to me than I deserve, and my entire family has been the beneficiary of it, especially in finding places to send my kids to school at the very last minute, because I'm a bit of a procrastinator, and Maureen and Mike have been very helpful in helping us navigate the D.C. school environment for our young children, and so we're grateful to them. I want to give a shout out and a note of appreciation to Congressman Chris Smith from the great state of New Jersey, who I know received the great award. And we're grateful to his leadership and grateful for his friendship, and he is a very good guy. So Chris, I assume you're out there somewhere, though I can't see you. But congratulations, man, we're proud of you, and I'm proud to be here with you. I want to thank Mark Randall, who of course has hosted an incredible breakfast for now This is the 20th year, I believe, of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, and it seems like we're doing pretty good here with the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. And of course, this breakfast holds a very special place in my heart. As Maureen mentioned, I came here last year as a very young senator, not knowing how much my life would change. And I'm thankful to God, but also thankful to the friendship of the people in this room for helping us get there, because I think that we have turned a new page in Washington, D.C., and we are going to take advantage of the opportunity that God has given us. So I want to say a couple of words just about Trump administration policy, because while you're certainly not always going to agree with everything that we do in President Trump's administration, I feel very confident in saying that between protecting the rights of pro-life protesters, between ensuring that we have an opportunity to protect the rights of the unborn in the first place, and importantly, protecting the religious liberty of all people, but in particular Catholics, I think that we can say that President Trump, though not a Catholic himself, has been an incredibly good president for Catholics in the United States of America. Now, we know, of course, the last administration liked to throw people in jail for silently praying outside of pro-life clinics. We know that they like to harass pro-life fathers of seven, very often Catholic fathers, for participating in the pro-life movement. And we know that the last administration wanted to protect taxpayer-funded abortion right up into the moment of birth. And on every single one of those issues, in 30 short days, Donald J. Trump has gone in the exact opposite direction, and I am thankful for that, and I'm sure that every single person in this room is thankful for that as well. But I actually want to talk about a couple of other things. In particular, one of the most important parts of President Trump's policy, and where I think President Trump's policy is most in accord with Christian social teaching and with the Catholic faith, is that more than any president of my lifetime, President Trump has pursued a path of peace. And we very often, I think, ignore the way in which our foreign policy is either an instrument or an impediment to people all over the world being able to practice their faith. And we know, and as of course I learned in this breakfast last year, I believe there were some Nigerian priests who were being persecuted and were trying to protect their flock despite incredible persecution. We know that some of the biggest groups that are persecuted all over the world today are Christians. And the Trump administration promises you that whether it's here at home with our own citizens or all over the world, we will be the biggest defenders of religious liberty and the rights of conscience. And I think those policies will fall to the benefit of Catholics in particular all over the world. But I would say, my friends, that it's not enough simply to protect the rights of conscience, to pursue funding opportunities and grant-making opportunities that protect the rights of people to engage in religious conscience. We also have to remember that oftentimes the biggest impediments to religious liberty have not come through malice from the United States government, but have actually come through carelessness. And one of the things that I have to be honest, that I am most ashamed about, is that in the United States of America, sometimes it is our foreign misadventures that lead to the eradication of historical Christian communities all over the world. And so when President Trump talks about the need to bring peace, whether it's in Russia and Ukraine, whether it's in the Middle East, we of course have to recognize that as a policy oriented towards saving lives and carrying out one of Christ's most important commandments. But I think we also must recognize it as an effort to protect the religious liberty of Christians. Because over the past 40 years, it has often been historical Christian communities who bear the brunt of failed American foreign policy. And that is, in my view, perhaps the most important way in which Donald Trump has been a defender of Christian rights all over the world, is he has a foreign policy that is oriented towards peace. We have done it already so much in the past 30 days, and I'm proud that we will work for peace all over the world in the remaining 4 years of President Trump's term. And I think that's an important thing. Now, of course, we're not always going to agree, and I'm sure that there are people in this room who agree, who agree or disagree with some of our views on foreign policy, on any number of issues. The one thing that I will promise you is that you're always going to have an open door with me and with the president. I think that you've already seen that, and if you haven't, please come and bring your concerns, and some of you have already brought many concerns to me over the last 30 days. But also your attaboys, because I think that part of being a good presidential administration for people of faith all over the United States, part of it is listening to people of faith when they have concerns. And I think that it's important, and I'll make this commitment to you in front of God and in front of all those television cameras back there, that we will always listen to people of faith and people of conscience in the United States of America. You have an open door to the Trump administration, even and especially maybe when you disagree with us. So please use that opportunity, communicate with us when we get things right, but also when we get things wrong. And that is my solemn obligation, but also my request. Because, of course, as I've learned, with during the campaign, of course, I got Secret Service protection, and now it's bumped up now that I'm the Vice President of the United States. I live in a bubble, ladies and gentlemen. I live in a roaming bubble, and wherever I go, I'm surrounded by armed agents. The only way to keep me honest and the only way to know what is actually affecting the real lives of people all over our country is for you to talk to us. And so please consider that open door very much an invitation, but also a request. And I will say that, you know, I believe, Maureen, and maybe this is wrong, that I'm the first Catholic convert to ever be Vice President of the United States. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys clapping, because it turns out there are some people on the internet who don't like Catholic converts. And in fact, there are some Catholics who appear not to like Catholic converts. I've learned that the hard way, but of course the gross majority of my brothers and sisters in Christ have been incredibly welcoming and incredibly charitable, and for that I'm grateful. And I wanted to just reflect on that, on being a Catholic, and particularly a Catholic convert in public life, in the hopes that maybe it would provide some wisdom or some guidance or maybe just some interesting stories for those of you who are enjoying your breakfast. And, you know, one of the things that I try to remind myself of as a convert is that there's a lot I don't know. When I was a kid, we used to call new converts to the faith baby Christians. And I recognize very much that I am a baby Catholic, that there are things about the faith that I don't know. And so I try to be humble as best I can when I talk about the faith in publicly, because of course I'm not always going to get it right. And I don't want my inadequacies in describing our faith to fall back on the faith itself. And so if you ever hear me pontificating about the Catholic faith, please recognize it comes from a place of deep belief, but it also comes from a place of not always knowing everything all the time. And you know, I say that, of course, I don't try to comment on every single Catholic issue. I try not to get involved in the civil wars between Dominicans and Jesuits and conservative Catholics and progressive Catholics. But as Michael Corleone said in The Godfather, sometimes they pull me back in. Sometimes I can't help. I can't help but spout off. I am a politician after all, ladies and gentlemen. But the thing that I've tried to remind people of, and the thing that I try to remind myself of, is that what attracted me to the Christian faith and what attracted me to this church in particular is the recognition that grace is not something that happens instantaneously. It's something that God works in us over a long period of time, sometimes many years and sometimes many decades. You know, I think that when I was a kid, my assumption is that grace is something where the Holy Spirit would come in and it would solve all of our problems. And I learned the hard way as a Catholic, in part by following the sacramental life as best as I could, that grace is very much a process, that God works in us over time. He makes us closer to Him and makes us better people in the process. And so when I first became a Catholic, you know, I would probably go to confession every other week because I would fail to go to Mass every other week. And, you know, things would come up. You'd have business trips. You'd have, you know, the kids would get sick. And I just remember that this process of thinking, okay, if I don't go to church this week, I'm going to have to go and talk to some stranger about everything that I did bad the last 2 weeks. And that process worked in me a much better discipline, a much better prayerful life. And, you know, I'm batting probably like 95% of Sundays now that I actually go to Mass. And so, you know, this is, I think, one of the geniuses. Thank you. I think this is one of the geniuses of our faith, is that it teaches us through repetition in some ways, and it forms us through a process, of course, that is, I think, at the heart of the mystery of faith, that somehow by practicing the sacraments, even imperfectly, as I certainly do, God transforms us. And while I am as imperfect a Christian as any person in this room, I really do feel that God is transforming me every single day. And that's one of the great blessings of our faith and one of the great blessings of following the sacraments as I try to do. And so thank you all for welcoming a convert into your ranks, because I certainly benefit from it, and my family does too. You know, the second thing that I take from my Catholic faith is a recognition that the deepest and most important things are not material. They're not GDP. They're not the numbers that we see in the stock market. The real measure of health in a society is the safety and stability and the health of our families and of our people. We are in the business, of course, we're in the business of President Trump's administration of producing prosperity, but that prosperity is a means to an end. And that end is the flourishing, hopefully, of the life of every single citizen in the United States of America. That's why we care about these things. And, you know, I often remind myself that, you know, there have been times in the past where, you know, the GDP numbers were maybe moving in the right direction, where the stock market was moving in the right direction, but the United States of America was losing life expectancy. I think that what the Catholic Church calls me to do is to say that if the stock market's doing okay, but people are literally dying and losing years off of their life, then we have to do better as a country. Catholicism, Christianity, at its root, I think teaches our public officials to care about the deep things, the important things, the protection of the unborn, the flourishing of our children, and the health and the sanctity of our marriages. And yes, we care about prosperity, but we care about prosperity so that we can promote the common good of every citizen in the United States of America. And when I think about the deep things, the things that really matter, there was something really amazing that happened to me in November of 2024. All my friends were there, all my family was there. We were gathered together in a great moment of celebration. And of course, I'm talking about when my 7-year-old chose to be baptized into the Christian faith. And Ewan is at school right now, so he won't see this, but as amazing as it was to win the election, of course, in November of 2024, and as amazing as it was to know that President Trump would become president again and would get to accomplish so many good things for the American people, the thing that I was most excited about in November of 2024 is that the week after we won the election, my son chose to be baptized in the Christian faith. Now, here's the basic idea, and for those of you, of course, you all mostly are cradle Catholics, I assume, and typically we do water baptism of infants in the Catholic Church very, very early on. But as many of you know, I am part of an interfaith marriage. My wife, though she comes to church with us almost every single Sunday, she is not Catholic herself. And so the bargain that we have struck is that we will raise our kids Catholic, but we will let them choose the moment that they want to ultimately become baptized. And if that's terrible sacrilege, blame the Dominicans, because they're the ones who came up with this scheme. But my 7-year-old elected to become baptized, and it was the proudest moment maybe that I've ever had as a father. And he took it very seriously, and he wanted to know, what are the right things to say, Dad? What do I need to do? What does this mean? Why is this important? And it was an amazing thing for me to see my 7-year-old working through these things himself. And when I talk about the deep things, the important things, that's what I'm talking about. Of course we care about our economic indicators, and of course we care about the wages of our citizens. We care about those things because when our people are doing better, they can have the kinds of moments that promote the kind of flourishing that all of us believe is the very core of a good human life. And that, of course, in my case, was watching my little 7-year-old son become baptized. And so, while again, I will never be perfect, I will always try to remind myself that the goal of our public policy is to promote the common good, and I will fight for that every single day that I am a public official. And that brings me to the final observation I'd like to make as a Christian, a Catholic convert in public life, is that, sometimes the bishops don't like what I say. And I'm sure, by the way, sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. My goal is not to litigate when I'm right and when they're wrong or vice versa. My goal is to maybe articulate the way that I think about being a Christian in public life when you also have religious leaders in public life who have a spiritual duty to speak on the issues of the day. And the way that I try to think about it is the Catholic Church is a kind of technology. It's a technology that was developed 2,000 years ago, and it's coming into contact with a technology that's about 10 years old, 20 years old, and that's, of course, social media. And what I try to remind myself of is that the clergy are important spiritual leaders. You'll sometimes hear people say, well, we'll let the clergy talk about matters of the church, but we can ignore them when it comes to matters of public policy. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. That's certainly not the right way to look at it for me. But what I try to remind myself of is that we are not called as Christians to obsess over every social media controversy that implicates the Catholic Church. Whether it involves a clergy or a bishop or the Holy Father himself, I think that we could frankly take a page out of the books of our grandparents who respected our clergy, who looked to them for guidance, but didn't obsess and fight over every single word that came out of their mouth and entered social media. I don't think that's good. And I'm not, again, counseling all of you, but I don't think it's good for us as Christians to constantly fight with one another over every single controversy in the church. Sometimes we should let this stuff play out a little bit and try to live our faith as best we can under the dictates of our faith and under the dictates of our spiritual leaders, but not hold them to the standards of social media influencers because they're not. And I think And that brings me, of course, to the last point that I want to make, which is that, as you've probably seen publicly, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, has criticized some of our policies when it comes to immigration. And again, my goal here is not to litigate with him or any other clergy member about who's right and who's wrong. You obviously know my views, and I will speak to them consistently because I think that I have to do it because it serves the best interests of the American people. What I want to do instead is remind, and I talk to a lot of conservative Catholics, and I talk to progressive Catholics too, and I think that sometimes a lot of conservative Catholics are too preoccupied with their political criticisms of a particular clergy member or the leader of the Catholic Church. And of course, I'm not telling you that you're wrong, because sometimes I even agree with you. I think that what I would say is that it's not in the best interest of any of us, again, to treat the religious leaders of our faith as just another social media influencer. And I think, frankly, that goes in both ways. If I can be so bold, I think it's incumbent upon our religious leaders to recognize that in the era of social media, people will hang on every single word that they utter, even if that wasn't their intention, and even if a given declaration wasn't meant for consumption in the social media age. But every day since I heard of Pope Francis's illness, I say a prayer for the Holy Father, because while, yes, I was certainly surprised when he criticized our immigration policy in the way that he has, I also know that I believe that the Pope is fundamentally a person who cares about the flock of Christians under his leadership. And he's the man who cares about the spiritual direction of the faith. And I say this because every day, me and my children have said a prayer for the Holy Father. And we pray for his health, and we pray for his comfort as he deals with what appears to be a pretty serious health crisis. And while, yes, some of our media and some of our social media influencers, and even some of us fellow Catholics, I think try to bring the Holy Father into every culture war battle in American politics, I will always remember the Holy Father. Whether he makes its way through this illness, and I certainly hope that he does, I will always remember the Holy Father in March of 2020, at a time of incredible stress for really the entire world. Remember, that was the height of the COVID pandemic. None of us knew how bad it was. We heard reports from Italy of people dying en masse on ventilators, and personally, I had just a few weeks earlier welcomed our second child into the world. And so when the COVID pandemic happened, I had a 3-week-old baby at home, and I went to Dick's Sporting Goods, and I bought 900 rounds of ammunition. And then I went to Walmart, and I bought 2 bags of rice. And I sat at home with my bags of rice and my 900 rounds of ammunition and said, all right, we're just going to wait this thing out. And into that void, when a lot of people didn't know how bad it was, and of course, thankfully, the pandemic was not as bad as the very worst predictions. It was quite bad, but not as bad as the very worst predictions. I think all of us can remember that moment of the Holy Father standing in an empty St. Peter's Square, holding the Eucharist above his head, and giving a sermon that I return to consistently because it was incredibly meaningful to me at the time, and it remains meaningful today. And so if you'll forgive me, I hope that you'll be okay with me reading just an excerpt of the homily that Pope Francis gave. When evening had come, which of course is from Mark chapter 4, verse 35, the gospel passage we have heard begins like this. For weeks now it has been evening. Thick darkness has gathered over our squares, our streets, and our cities. It has taken over our lives, filling everything with a deafening silence and a distressing void that stops everything as it passes by. We feel it in the air, we notice it in people's gestures. Their glances give them away. We find ourselves afraid and lost. Like the disciples in the gospel, we were caught off guard by an unexpected, turbulent storm. We have realized that we are on the same boat, all of us fragile and disoriented, but at the same time important and needed. All of us called to row together, each of us in need of comforting the other. On this boat are all of us, just like those disciples who spoke anxiously with one voice, saying, we are perishing. So we too have realized that we cannot go on thinking of ourselves, but only together can we do this. It is easy to recognize ourselves in this story. What is harder to understand is Jesus' attitude. While his disciples are quite naturally alarmed and desperate, he is in the stern, in the part of the boat that sinks first. And what does he do? In spite of the tempest, he sleeps on soundly, trusting in the Father. This is the only time in the Gospels we see Jesus sleeping. When he wakes up, after calming the wind and the waters, he turns to the disciples in a reproaching voice. Why are you afraid? Have you no faith? Let us try to understand, in what does the lack of the disciples' faith consist, as contrasted with Jesus' trust? They had not stopped believing in him. In fact, they called on him. But we see how they call on him. Teacher, do you not care if we perish? Do you not care, they think, that Jesus is not interested in them, does not care about them? One of the things that hurts us in our families most when we hear said is, do you not care about me? It is a phrase that wounds and unleashes storms in our hearts. It would have shaken Jesus too, because he, more than anyone, cares about us. Indeed, once they have called on him, He saves his disciples from their discouragement. The storm exposes our vulnerability and uncovers those false and superfluous certainties around which we have constructed our daily schedules, our projects, our habits, and priorities. It shows us how we have allowed to become dull and feeble the very things that nourish, sustain, and strengthen our lives and our communities. The tempest lays bare all our prepackaged ideas and forgetfulness of what nourishes our people's souls. All those attempts that anesthetize us with ways of thinking and acting that supposedly save us, but instead prove incapable of putting us in touch with our roots and keeping alive the memory of those who have gone before us. We deprive ourselves of the antibodies we need to confront adversity. And I think that is an amazing phrase. That what we do so often in our lives, in our public life, in our private lives, is we deprive ourselves.
And that was Vice President J.D. Vance addressing the Catholic prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. Vance himself spoke of converting to Catholicism and his experiences. He contrasted very strongly the Trump administration versus the climate under the Biden administration, where people were arrested for protesting outside of abortion centers. He also spoke of the mandate to bring Christian values in foreign policy, saying Christians around the world, in Africa, and we know this is happening in China, are arrested for their faith. But he said that the attempts to improve the economy aren't the end in and of themselves, but it's actually to help humans flourish, which he views as part of their responsibility as Christians and Catholics. So certainly charming. He had a lot to say, and he got some laughs out of the crowd as well. All
with apparently impromptu words coming forth. Very heartfelt moments there.
Yeah, he seemed to like to throw his communications director under the bus and say he was going rogue, but certainly seemed to be appreciated by the crowd there at the prayer breakfast. And if you are just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines.
A district judge is ordering Trump administration officials to clarify under oath the inner workings of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency. A DOGE employee will be asked to clarify who's leading the department and making decisions and what employees are tasked with doing. In a separate case, a California judge ruled that mass firings of probationary federal workers is likely illegal. Some workers will be reinstated and the firings are on pause.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy expected to close a minerals deal with President Trump today in Washington. The exact details of the deal are not clear yet, but Zelenskyy says they'll be discussed during the talks today. This is while a U.S. delegation met with Russian counterparts in Turkey just yesterday to restore operation of the embassies in Washington and Moscow.
President Trump confirmed that tariffs on Mexican and Canadian goods will take effect on March 4th. He also proposed an extra 10% duty on Chinese imports.
Just a question about China. 10% tariffs has already been implemented on China. Are you planning to do an additional 10 above the 10? This will be an additional 10 above. And is there, from the talks with Canada and Mexico so far, are you not seeing the progress that you wanted in order to
I don't see it at all. No, not on drugs.
President Trump says the countries are not doing enough to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.
And Trump announced that new tariffs on European goods will be implemented soon.
Yes, in France, many exporters are concerned about the measures as the government has promised to respond.
NTD's international correspondent David Vives interviewed champagne producers in Paris for their reactions.
The Trump administration announcement of new tariffs is shaking French producers who export to the United States. Many of them, including small producers, fear a drop in their revenue. President Trump announced on Thursday that a 25% tariff on EU goods will be implemented very soon. This was a topic of discussion at the agricultural fair in Paris yesterday among French producers who export their goods to the U.S.
Around 170 million bottles of champagne are exported every year across the globe. The rest are sold in France. So it's true that these new tariffs can be a real problem.
The owner of award-winning Champagne Grémier, Stéphane Gonzalez, said he's exporting 250,000 champagne bottles worldwide, with a large portion destined for the U.S.
This morning, I said in my speech we should tax Tesla cars by 50%. We're going to go toe-to-toe. We have to go toe-to-toe and fight back. On the other hand, I understand Trump's reasons. He's trying to protect his country.
Even smaller producers seem to be impacted by tariffs.
Our aim is to move into export, but it seems the U.S. market is very complicated for us. I remember when the United States had imposed tariffs on alcohol over 12% under Trump's first term.
This can have an impact on even the smallest wine grower who doesn't sell on the export market, because, in fact, he won't be able to harvest the full capacity of his vineyard even if it produces enough grapes. If he wants to maintain the quality, he needs to prevent overproduction that can devaluate the champagne. That's a bit frustrating.
The tariffs won't impact alcohol only. This candy maker exports a large percentage of his candy to the US. Says tariffs on his products change the buyer's mindset. Do you expect a drop in sales?
20 to 30%, but it's for my part, let's say.
French government spokeswoman Sophie Primas said on Thursday the government will respond to the new tariffs if it's compelled to. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
I always appreciate our Paris reporter, David Vives, reporting from France.
For sure.
And now we're at the point where we have to wrap up our show, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD News today at 10 Eastern coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Carrie Dunst, have a great weekend.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50-enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted